Good afternoon, Ms. Real Schmidt. And welcome.
Thank you.
Make yourself comfortable, and when you are ready, you may begin with your opening statement.
Thank you. Well, I want to thank you all for your generous and dedicated service to this commission. It has really been such a pleasure for me, as I've shared with a lot of you, talking with all of you over the past few weeks. It's been a wonderful experience. If you've been driving or walking around the south side of Des Moines the last few months, you might see me out walking. But I'm not just walking. I've got on my hiking boots, and I've got on a big avocado green backpack. And in my backpack, I've got my sleeping bag and just a few other things to put a little weight in it, a pair of shoes, things like that. And you'll see me walking, and I'd be walking along the side of the sidewalk in the grass rather than on it. And the reason I'm doing this is that I'm preparing to go backpacking in the Bighorn Mountains in Wyoming, I hope. So I'm planning on it, and as I've been preparing to go backpacking, I've had a lot of time to reflect on what I would need to do to prepare for a position on the Court of Appeals. If I'd had the foresight to know and the confidence to believe that I'd be here, my younger self would have told me to take a more direct and focused path to get here. I would have said, yes, you go do that judicial clerkship. That's the right thing to do. And after that, what I want you to do is I want you to go work for a law firm for a good long time, go serve as a district associate judge, and then as a district court judge. And along the way, you should really make sure you get in a lot of practice in the areas of family law and criminal law. But as I've reflected, I know that my crooked path that I've taken has been a better preparation for the Court of Appeals than any path that I could have taken otherwise. My crooked path has given me a breadth in the types of law that I've been able to touch upon. It's given me breadth in the types of communities I've lived and worked in. It's given me breadth in the people I've known, the people I've worked for, and the people I've worked with. I think they say that the crooked path looks straighter when you're looking backwards. And as I look back on my crooked path, it looks straight, and I think it has been the best preparation for this position on the Court of Appeals. I have several characteristics, partially created by my crooked path, but partly just because of who I am, that make me the best candidate among these very notable candidates for this position for the Court of Appeals. First, I'm adaptable and I have a passion for learning. I've been able to walk into so many jobs and do the job and do it well. But that adaptability is an outgrowth of both my passion for my learning and for my ability to learn quickly. It doesn't seem so difficult to adapt if you're really excited about learning something new. Second, I have an objective and perceptive temperament that's well suited for the Court of Appeals. I've talked with a lot of you about my thoughts on objectivity and how important I think it should play a role in being a lawyer and practicing law. I've talked about how I've tried to integrate that objectivity in my practice of law and in my life. Similarly, because I've lived and worked in such a variety of communities and with a cross-section of so many people, I've become perceptive about different points of view. And I don't mean a sympathy for you or you or you. What I mean is an understanding of your perspective and your perspective and your perspective. What I mean is I'm not taking sides, but I'm able to consider all sides because I can see all of the perspectives. This objectivity and perspective temperament will serve me well in the Court of Appeals, where the work to be done is to apply the law consistently across the state so that the folks in Maquoketa and the folks down in Ottumwa, Sioux City, Fort Dodge, all know that the law is going to be applied the same way to them and that they're all going to get a fair shake. Third, I can write well and efficiently. I'd venture to guess that all your applicants have strong writing skills, but I taught legal writing for over a decade, And in that process, I came to better understand what makes me a good writer and the template for writing well. Teaching not only made me a better writer, but it made me an efficient writer. And that's a skill that's particularly needed on a court that's putting out over around 1,300 opinions a year. Fourth, I'm a good collaborator. Like many of you who are lawyers, I've collaborated as a lawyer, but I've also collaborated in a lot of other contexts. I've collaborated with my teaching team, working together to create the best materials to teach our students. I've collaborated on presentations and projects. I collaborated on a book. And in my current position, I collaborate with the Medicaid folks on the ground. I collaborate with healthcare entities. I collaborate with other governmental entities. I know when to listen, I know when to lead, and I know when to hole up in my office and get my part of the project done. Finally, I want to serve the folks of the state of Iowa. Commissioner Valentine asked me if I was an Iowa girl. I am. I came to live in Iowa 21 years ago, and for the last 38 years, I've spent all but 8 of that here in Iowa. When I was growing up, my folks moved around a bit, and I didn't know how to answer that question, where are you from? Well, I know now, I'm from Iowa. A few weeks ago, my daughters and I went shopping for a wedding dress for my youngest daughter. She's getting married in April. And I packed a cooler full of water and snacks because I knew it was going to be a long, hard day, and I wasn't sure if we were going to have time to eat, and I wanted to make sure everyone stayed well hydrated. In the car, my daughters began talking about how different people have different love languages. And I asked them, what's my love language? And they said, service. You do things for other people. My greatest desire is to use my language of service to its highest and best use as a judge on the Court of Appeals to serve Iowa, the place that I'm from. I'd ask that you'd forward my name to Governor Reynolds so I'd have an opportunity to do that.
Thank you. And now we will take some time for the commission to ask some questions. And at this time, we will begin with Mr. Horbach.
Thank you, Madam Chair. With the Attorney General's office, you had the opportunity to work on a case that involved a medical provider. And it's my opinion that the state had every right to shut that place down or come to that result. But you identified that there were a lot of patients that used that and they couldn't get that service anywhere else. And so you, instead of working to shut them down, you came to a plausible conclusion that allowed that to maintain that service to the patients. Is that a great example of the type of results you look to, the outcomes that you seem to achieve, and is that something that you would like to extend onto the Court of Appeals?
Yes and yes. So in my job as a representing Medicaid, my primary area is to work with program integrity, and their purpose is to prevent fraud, waste, and abuse. But we also know that the Medicaid program, the importance of that is to serve vulnerable Iowans who need health care. And so in that respect, there were a lot of tensions between the interests of Medicaid, and what we needed to do was preserve the place for the folks to get care, but we were able to ensure that the person who was acting in a way that suggested they might commit fraud was walled off from that program. So in my work now, there's always that tension between two different things that need to be done in the program. And yes, I do try to achieve both of those. I'm not a prosecutor. I'm someone who needs to look to all the interests of the program. On the Court of Appeals, clearly you're always going to have to be weighing the tensions between different positions. There are winners and losers, and sometimes you're going to have to apply the law in a way that might not be as comfortable as you would like, but always keeping in mind that there are those tensions and keeping in mind that each person has a position to present, and you need to listen to all sides.
Mr. Bevel.
Thank you. Your daughter's mentioning service. Can you give us some examples of the kind of service you've done?
Gosh, okay.
We don't have
Everyone
all
always
day,
likes
but-
everyone always likes the Mayor of Steamboat Rock service,
Okay.
and that's really I think that really is the beginning of my service in many different ways. But you know, when you serve as Mayor of Steamboat Rock, you get the calls about someone burning tires, and you have to figure out what to do about that. So I've served in that way. I've served a lot just as in ways that promote what my children have been doing. That's just, you know, part of who I am. And so a lot of my service has been in service to those types of things. I think that my teaching, I hope, serve the greater legal community to prepare a generation or perhaps two of lawyers to practice law. And I think that my representation of Medicaid, while folks look upon me kindly because I represent Medicaid, it is a service, and someone has to be out there and doing that. So I think I've done a lot of different and varied things to serve not just Iowa, but people.
Thank you.
Mrs. Sinclair?
No questions.
Mrs. Valentine?
Thank you. You've talked a bit about collaboration, and with an eye towards collaboration, could you expand a little bit more on how you believe your time at the Drake Law School would benefit the Court of Appeals?
So there are a lot of things about the time I spent at Drake that would benefit the Court of Appeals. So I'm going to just focus on collaboration and not the teaching aspect of it. But what I discovered in working with folks there, and when I talk about my teaching team, we weren't required to be a team. We could have worked independently to create our own materials, but we did work as a team because it made us better. And so I really learned through working with my team that you can have a better product, a better result if you work together and you're respectful of other folks. It's not always easy. You can't always be the smartest person in the room, but when you acknowledge that sometimes it's someone else who's the smartest person in the room, you can get a lot done.
Thank you.
Mr. Berger? Ms. Stanger?
No questions.
Ms. Pearson?
I will just recap. When we met, and I certainly enjoyed our conversation, but I asked you, which you reiterated, not because it was my question, but you covered my comments that I made when we did meet of, you know, what were your top three, maybe 3 or 4 qualifications that kind of set you apart or differentiate you from others who are applying for this position. So, and you just commented your collaboration abilities and that you're good at listening and thoughtful, and you become an expert at areas that you have responsibility for, and you know when to lead, follow, listen, respect others. So thank you for reiterating those comments today. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Mr. Gray?
No question.
Ms. Law?
No questions.
Mr. Goodman?
I'll ask you the question that's been asked a number of times about district court and associate district court judges, because obviously you're on the attorney side of this and you come from government. Help us with that decision. We have 7 judges and 9 practitioners, and we have 3 chances to get it right. So tell us about including a lawyer or more than one lawyer in that group with the opportunities we have to appoint district court and associate district court judges.
So what I think you're looking for is someone who can be a part of this team. You're looking for the right person for your team on this court. And right now you have, I think, 4 judges on the Court of Appeals who've served as district court judges. So I think of it as from the perspective of I was on the gymnastics team. So you've got 4 people who can do the balance beam. And what you need now is somebody who can do the uneven parallel bars, and I'm that person.
Mr. Sukup?
Good afternoon.
Good
You
afternoon.
mentioned that you had traveled or you were admitted in the bar in 3 different states, some experiences from the other states, Indiana.
So in each place that I worked, it was always a little bit different. And so the firm I worked for in Indiana was a small firm, and I did a lot of preparation of their cases for litigation. One of the things that I began doing in Indiana that's really meaningful to me is I served some Social Security disability clients. And I had a handful of those that were women who are about the age I am now, and they didn't have a lot of formal education, what I would call pull yourself up by your own bootstraps folks, but they got sick and they needed some help. And those disability files take a long time, about 2 years to get from beginning to where you get a decision. And so you have to hang in there. And I was fortunate at the time that my practice was flexible, and I was able to make house calls because my clients were sick. So those results, while not meaningful on the big scale of things, and probably not something someone would expect me to put on my application, were very meaningful to me. So as that part of my practice in Indiana was very meaningful.
Thank you.
Ms. O'Brien?
No questions, thank you.
Mr. Hoyting?
I liked your analogy to the crooked path, and as Mr. Goodman's questions kind of alluded to, there's a lot to think about as far as what is the best preparation for being an appellate court judge. Your resume, rightly or wrongly, reminds me a little bit of the debate around Justice Elena Kagan, who did not come with a great deal of trial experience or litigation experience, and there was some debate about how much that mattered, but I don't think anybody would question whether she was qualified or not. Do you have any idea or an example of a judge that you believe kind of followed a crooked path to being a successful appellate court judge?
Well, I think in part a little bit, Justice Christensen had a little bit of a crooked path because she didn't start out as a lawyer, and she did a lot of different things. And I watched her interview with this commission, and so I do think that she had a little bit of a crooked path. You know, obviously some of hers was a little bit straighter than mine. So that's probably the best example I can get when, you know, boy, I wasn't expecting that question. So, but I think she had a bit more of a crooked path. And I think when you look at it, the main objective is, are you getting a person who's right for the position? And crooked path or not, I think you're looking for someone with a certain amount of breadth. And I certainly bring breadth to this position. So I'd be really happy to do it.
Thank you.
Mr. Spees?
Thank you. And Chief Justice Earl Warren, from Governor of California to the Chief Justice of the United States. I was intrigued by your article about legal education focusing too much on litigation and not enough on the other aspects of law. And you claim to become a student of the craft of legal writing and the craft of the law, and survived the Drake Law School faculty. Is there something about your background and the crooked path that you've taken that you feel insecure about in attempting this job?
Would it be terrible if I said no?
A shortcoming that haunts you?
I don't have a shortcoming that haunts me, because I think, honestly, Commissioner Spees, when I look back, every time I ever felt a shortcoming, as I went into each job, it disproved itself. I shouldn't have felt it. And I think the shortcomings I felt going into this process, I have to honestly say that this process has been a confidence builder, because talking about myself and the places I've been has made me see that what I might have viewed as a shortcoming is really something that's going to be beneficial to the court. And so I think having been in all of these areas has helped me. And you're right, I would not say I am an expert on a lot of things, but I know a lot about a lot of things.
Mr. Bloom, we have time for one more question. Would you like to ask that question?
I would, but Mr. Gray has set the new standard that we're not supposed to ask a question unless it's a good one.
Then are you yielding
I'll
to
pass.
Ms. Conover?
Just a comment, let's just call it a winding path, maybe not a crooked path.
I guess I should have had you help me beforehand.
It has been a pleasure to have you here this afternoon. Thank you for your time, and we wish you well.
All right, thank you all so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.